Welcome to the 2017 Marshall Axe Ghost Out Day program. My name is Ashley Arndorfer, and I am a member of Marshall Axe, which stands for Against Alcohol, Tobacco, Chemical Substance Use. As a group, we work to inform high school students about the damaging effect alcohol, tobacco, and drug use can have on teenagers as well as adults. We visit schools in the area to encourage students to stay away from drug, alcohol, and tobacco use. If you'd like to get involved with Marshall Axe, please speak to the school nurse, Mrs. Herman. This week was Red Ribbon Week. Throughout this week, we have held activities each day to raise awareness about the damaging impacts of drug, tobacco, and alcohol use for both teenagers and adults. We handed out handcrafted bracelets, put red ribbons on cars, and today was our Ghost Out Day at Marshall High School. For the Ghost Out Day activity, we selected 20 students to represent people who made bad choices with deadly consequences. Unfortunately, none of them got the chance to take their choices back. The consequences were permanent. The Grim Reaper took each student out of class and ghosted them out with white face paint. This symbolized the people from each scenario who were killed in preventable, unnecessary accidents. We are lucky that the students you're about to see will be back in class next week. Too often, this isn't the case. The following scenarios were inspired by true stories, and in each case, there were empty desks at school in the days, weeks, and months that followed.
Jake and Rachel were walking across the street from the movie theater when a drunk driver flew around the corner, blowing the red light, hitting both Jake and Rachel. They both died. The drunk driver survived and will have to deal with the fact that he killed 2 people for the rest of his life.
Mo, Devin, Aaron, and Owen were using their fake IDs to get alcoholic drinks at the Chanhassen Dinner Theater. After the show, Aaron decided to get behind the wheel, drunk, and drive the other 3 home, who were also intoxicated. They crossed a bridge, but they lost control and swerved and hit the side rail of the bridge, flipping into the river.
Sydney, Claire, Jordan, and Olivia left the party after the football game. Olivia was behind the wheel, and the other 3 were so intoxicated they didn't remember to buckle up. Olivia thought she saw something in the road, so she swerved, losing control of the car. They rolled into the ditch, and all 4 were ejected from the vehicle and died on impact.
Austin Somervold, Austin Morris, and Y.A. Black were driving home from a football game when they saw a truck swerve into their lane. The truck was driven by Trevor, who was drunk. He hit them head-on, killing them all, including himself.
Hugo, Nacho, and Daniel were coming back from soccer bonding at Hugo's house. They were all drinking and decided to get behind the wheel. Daniel was driving and heard his phone go off, so he grabbed it out of his pocket, glanced at it, drifted into the other lane, hitting a semi head-on. They were killed instantly.
Natasha, Jakaya, and Emma were rollerblading to dance practice when Natasha screamed, seeing a vehicle jump the curb, hitting all 3, killing them. The driver was drunk and didn't think before he acted. He chose to drive drunk and risked many people's lives.
Welcome to the Ghost Out panel discussion. Here with me I have some first responders.
Louis Lawaji, Paramedic Operations Supervisor for North Memorial Health Ambulance, Marshall Region.
Officer Van Louis, Marshall Police Department, and I'm currently the School Resource Officer in Marshall High School.
Eric Wallen, Lyon County Sheriff's Office, where I'm a sergeant.
Holly Lawaji, Southwest Health and Human Services, Chemical Use Assessor.
Mark Clythe, the Fire Chief for the City of Marshall.
So what inspired you to become a first responder?
You know, for me, it went back to when I was in college as a pre-med major, and my advisor at college at that time said, why don't you become an EMT or work in the nursing home? So I picked the EMT side and enjoyed it a lot. I really have. It's a lot of different things every day. So.
I think different than Lewis, for me it was much younger, mostly being sucked in by TV and movies, I guess, and it looked exciting and interesting, but as you got into it and studied it, researched a little more, the variety of what they, as police officers, we get to do was really appealing.
Well, I'm not technically a first responder, but being a social worker, deciding to go into the chemical dependency field, just the variety of it and just being able to help people when they need it the most.
You know, for me, I think it goes back when I was in elementary school and the fire department came for fire drills, which I know everybody enjoys having fire drills during Fire Prevention Week. And being a part of that community, they were doing in the community all the time and helping people. I guess that's what enticed me to do it.
When I was younger, I had a stepdad who was a fireman, so I kind of grew up with the pager going off, and I was one of those kids at 3 o'clock in the morning, the pager would go off, and I could hear him rustling around upstairs to get ready, and I'd run upstairs, open the garage door, and have the keys ready for him so that he could go, and then it was always, what's going on, what's happening, and I'm not a person who sits still very well, so I like the job variety, and just the different things, different people and different activities every single day.
In your experience, how often are accidents or house calls related to alcohol or drugs?
There's a high number of calls that we go to that does involve alcohol and drugs because people don't call the police when they're happy and everything's going well. They call the police when they're in trouble, they need help, or situations arise where it's a domestic abuse or violence situation, loud and noisy gatherings, or disorderly conduct. So they call the police when those things are happening. So it does happen fairly often that it's alcohol involved.
You know, for us, I think our accident calls, there is some that alcohol's involved in. They're usually later in the evening. Law enforcement's usually got there. Again, they've made poor choices, and at the end of the day, they've caused a problem for law enforcement, the first responders, and the people involved in the accident. So they are out there.
And when you speak of accidents, we have a lot of minor accidents, fender benders in the Walmart parking lot or wherever. There's lots of those. They don't compare a number to the ones that involve alcohol or drugs. But the problem is that those that do involve that are much more severe. There's a lot more property damage and injuries and people that die from things like that.
What are those situations like when you go into the homes?
It can be difficult at times. Their ability to follow along and understand the conversation is difficult. Sometimes they just can't communicate well in general. They're irrational. It's hard to make a person understand what's going on and what is the root cause of the situation because it doesn't click for them with the alcohol or drugs in their system.
Change their stories a lot. They may say one thing, and then when they realize that law enforcement or they're somehow going to get in trouble or have a consequence, then they change their story to try and it's really difficult to sort through what is really going on here and how is the best way for us to respond to each of their needs.
In the most recent years, we have seen an increase in the amount of people texting and using Snapchat while driving. What do you have to say about this?
It's true.
Don't do it.
I mean, we can drive around, and I drive a pickup truck for my patrol vehicles. I sit up a little higher, and it's much easier to see in the vehicles, and it's a huge problem.
And for me, it's not, I could give a ticket to everybody. A lot of people will hide them when law enforcement is around, so you're not able to give the tickets and to enforce it. But you see it when you're driving your personal vehicle, you know it's happening. And I could give a little ticket to somebody, they pay a $130 fine, and it's not a big deal for them, and it's not a huge deal for me if I give them a ticket. But the big thing is if those things don't happen and people continue to drive under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or their cell phone, distracted, the big thing is when there's an accident that kills them or someone else. The big thing is when we as community members have family and friends who we're going to visit at the funeral home because that's where they are, or we have relatives who we go to visit in a prison somewhere because that's where they are. Those are the big things. The ticket is a small thing, and you need to think big picture if you're going to make the choice to do that.
You know, for us, I think in law enforcement in this community, we know a lot of people. We know a lot of young adults. And when that pager goes off because of the texting and the driving, that could be somebody we know. And being a first responder, it hits you in the heart. So I will tell you, I'm just like them. Vehicles are high powered, they're big vehicles. You need to be paying attention. And there's a lot of young drivers out there and a lot of diverse drivers that don't know all of the rules and the laws that need to be followed. So you really need to be paying attention because you're going to change somebody's life if you're in a major accident. And you're probably changing a bunch of people's lives.
Yeah, as well as your own.
Yeah.
Because if you were the one who was texting or driving or distracted, it's going to affect you also. And I mean, there's countless times where we've been involved in that situation where we responded to where there was distracted driving or texting or something along those lines.
You know what, I've told other people that I've spoken to with the driver's ed courses and stuff, I don't think people always understand the finality of these situations because you go to those speaking engagements, you watch a video, you see some people's stories of how it's affected them, then you go back to your normal lives and you forget all about it. I mean, you'll watch this presentation at some point and it'll stick in your head for maybe half a day, and then you'll get busy with other stuff and it's gone. But the people that are injured in the crash, that's forever. The people that have died, that's forever. I mean, that doesn't change for those people. So you have to remember your actions will affect somebody else for their whole life.
And ask yourself before you pick up the phone to check a text, or before you send a text out, is that okay with you if that's the last thing you ever get to do? That's a risk and a gamble you have to kind of answer yourself and figure out.
And you're gonna affect a lot of people's lives. So if you do have an accident.
That's right. I mean, it's not just your own. I mean, it's your parents, your siblings, the people in the other car, their whole family. This is a small town. We know most of the crashes we go to, we know these people. I mean, we know who they are. Some of these ambulance personnel, fire people, that's their family. They're cutting out of cars. And that's very tragic.
What would you say to teens who are currently using alcohol and drugs?
Stop.
That's my first answer too.
Yeah, stop, don't do it. It doesn't benefit you at all. It only makes things worse.
In our line of work, what we say about addiction is it ends in jail, prison, or death. And that is the reality of it, because a lot of my clients that I see, maybe they started using when they were 13, 14, and now they're 50 and in and out of jail, prison. They can go back and look at their life history, and it's drugs and alcohol is all that they have to say for their life.
I will tell you, being a parent of teenagers, these are the best years of your life. Don't screw them up. Enjoy them.
And you have the rest of your life to make decisions about alcohol and drugs every day for the rest of your life. The sooner you start, the more likely you are to become an addict, the more likely you are to face the consequences that come with them. Every time you choose to drink or use, be ready to accept the consequences if they come your way.
And those affect your whole life too. I mean, depending on what happens, it could affect the type of jobs you're able to get. I mean, if you do something that gets a felony on your record, a lot of places, a lot of quality jobs are not going to hire you. And you better be prepared to work in a job that doesn't pay very well, because that's the best you're going to do.
And I think too, the sooner that you pick up drugs or alcohol, then by the time you are 21 or in your 20s, you're picking up harder drugs, and the alcohol and the marijuana or whatever, it's really not entertainment anymore. It's more the meth and the heroin and those kind of things, which are scary.
If teens are drinking, what is some things that they should do and what they should not do?
There's a lot of peer pressure for teens, a lot of peer pressure to belong, be involved, or have the courage to say no and have the courage to leave.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, if you're in a situation, don't be afraid to call your mom and dad or your friend's mom and dad or something and say, I need some help. And if, don't be afraid. I think everybody goes law enforcement, we can't. Don't be afraid of them. If you need help, they're going to come there and help. They would sooner take you home or get a hold of your parents than to have you get in a vehicle and drive and have an accident or something else happen to you. So again, reach out to people. And the biggest thing is just say no and walk away.
Even if you have been drinking, don't let that deter you from calling for help. I mean, whatever minor punishments you might receive is probably much less than the tragic things that can happen. And actually,
There's a law.
There's a law, yes, I was just going to say. If you are calling to help somebody who's in a crash or something and you've been drinking, you can't be charged with minor consumption of alcohol or anything like that. You're protected. It's to encourage you to call and get these other people the help that they need.
Holly, from your line of view, what do you see from teens using drugs or alcohol?
I would say a lot of teenagers that I meet with, it's alcohol, marijuana, and then a lot of prescription pills. And that's something that once you're addicted to those kind of medications, it's very hard to get off of them. And the withdrawal, once you do stop taking them, is very severe.
Teens' choice to abuse drugs and alcohol, how does that affect their families?
I would say that yeah, it affects their family in negative ways because they say that addiction is a family disease. And so, it's kind of like what they talked about before of how an accident, you might think, well, it didn't affect me or, whatever, but it is affecting other people. And, you've affected your parents by they can't trust you anymore. They don't know, who it's affecting your friends. Maybe you've lost friends. It is horrific how it does affect families. I mean, parents are taking their kids to court or treatment.
What are some of the penalties for getting caught drinking and using substances underage?
The laws that apply would be minor consumption, minor possession. It's illegal to have those things if you are under the age of 21. There's a law called the not a drop law, which means if you're under the age of 21 and driving a vehicle and you're caught and tested and you have any amount of alcohol in your system, you're going to lose your license.
And I would say this, stay on the positive side of things. Drugs and alcohol are a negative side, and at this young age, and you're young adults, enjoy that time. Like Sarah said, you're going to have time in the future that you can make decisions that you're probably going to regret. But right now, stay on the positive side. You guys have sports, you have band, you have all of these things going on. Just enjoy it.
Every 53 minutes, somebody dies from alcohol abuse. 88,000 people every year. This could be you or one of your classmates if you don't take a stand. Take a stand against alcohol and drugs. Your future is key, so stay drug-free.